To our show here tonight. Welcome to We'll Sing and We'll Shout with your host Steve Hansen. Always love coming on here every night. I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't really feel that nervous about all this. It used to be that I would feel really nervous right before this would all start, and then once I got rolling, the nervousness would kind of flow away. But I've kind of gotten to the point where I really don't feel that way. I've kind of gotten used to what I look like on a screen. It doesn't scare me anywhere near as much as it did 9 months ago. I can tell you that. I would have gotten nowhere near this screen 9 months ago, and but I'm much more comfortable with the way I look on a screen. Still would like to work on improving that, and plan to do so. But generally speaking, I really kind of enjoying this. Yeah, which is so funny because 3 months ago, I was really feeling pretty intimidated by the whole idea of coming on here and being on a screen and talking to people live. But, I played around a little bit with the idea of doing recordings and then, trying to maybe redo them and cut and paste and whatever, and that is just so much work, and you can never get your recording perfect, and so as a perfectionist, like many of us would be on something like that, it would drive us nuts, and you never really get to the point where you feel comfortable with your end result. And you could spend all day goofing around with something like that and still not feel good about it. And so, my suggestion to anybody who thinks they want to try something like this is don't even play around with the recording game. Just jump in there and make it happen and go live and get used to seeing yourself and just be okay that sometimes you're going to say things that don't quite sound right or don't come out right. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes. Like I've often went back and watched my recordings. Or my lives. I go back and watch my lives every time, and I often find myself saying things that I realize, oh, that's not exactly what I meant to say, or that is actually wrong. I said that the wrong way. I was thinking about it in one way in my head, but somehow it came out of my mouth completely inaccurate. But when you're in the middle of a live like that, you don't tend to catch your mistakes because you're trying to think forward to the next thing that you want to say. So I learned from all those things, but it really is it's been a really learning and growing experience to come on here on a nightly basis and to just share so many different stories and so many different things. Um, Again, I have often said this, and I feel this way again here today. I just feel so blessed and grateful for the changes that have come into my life the last 9 months, as I have felt my life heal in so many amazing ways by finding some simple nutraceuticals that have just dramatically improved my gut health in a way that I could have never imagined. I mean, I feel like I have a better metabolism, better gut health than I've ever had in my life. And I am not someone who has suffered with these things in some kind of really, significant or awful way. There are so many people who suffer with these issues of gut health and metabolism and obesity and diabetes and so many other things far worse than anything that I know of. So I would consider my issues having been pretty mild, really. But they still, even though I would consider myself to have been on the mild end of this category, they still have had a significant impact on my life. And I could sit here and talk for a long time about how much things could have been different for me over the last 59 and a half years if I had simply had better gut health and understood my metabolism better and how to better nourish my system and how to have a better relationship with food. And my world could have been so much different all along here if I had just better understood some things that I understand now. And although there are a lot of resources for this information, the one that I have learned so much from is this guy, this Dr. Jason Fung, who operates out of Toronto. And he wrote this book called The Obesity Code 10 years ago. And then here just recently, this book here was released just a month or two ago. You can find this on Amazon, The Hunger Code. And it really breaks down what drives our hunger. And hunger obviously drives obesity. If you're not hungry, you're probably not going to be eating. And if you're not eating, then you're going to be able to control your weight and not be obese. And you learn so much about the fact that being overweight and being obese and so many other issues are not tied to your lack of willpower. It's not a question of you're just not good enough. You're just not doing a good enough job of controlling your calories in, your calories out. You're not doing a good enough job with your diet, and you're not working hard enough with your exercise. That's just all bogus. As you know, in the barn there on the farm, we would have a completely different term for that. It would sound a lot like BS. But but that's just completely bogus. And to understand that this is all tied back to hormones, specifically, most importantly, the hormone insulin. And when you can understand what that hormone is doing in your body and how to take control of that hormone by eating properly, by eating in the right times, by not eating in between meals, and by getting a reasonable fasting period in every evening and into the next day, how you can take some basic concepts that everybody can apply in their lives and and get some help from some simple nutraceuticals as needed, that you can totally change the game for yourself in a way that you have never imagined before. And I was just stunned. I was just stunned at how much uh, this protocol changed my life, but just as much, or maybe even more, has been the knowledge that has now come in my life and the understanding that I have that if I had just done some simple things and understood some simple concepts so long ago, my entire life could have been so blessed and so different. And why did I not come across this until I was 59 years old? Like why have I had to suffer to the degree that I have with these issues, but even more so watch so many other people suffer so much more dramatically than I have, and especially and specifically my mother who died at age 58 and struggled with metabolic issues her entire life, and certainly her entire adult life that I knew her, and struggled with a lot of mental illness that was tied directly back to her gut health. And when I consider that and how much different her life could have been if she could have understood these same things, that's information was just not out there in the medical community the way that it needed to be, although it wasn't hidden. And some of these same concepts and principles are available in diet and health information that was around 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Like some of this, the roots of this stuff has been there all along. So why have we been so lied to? Why have we been so misled about really what helps us to be healthy, to have a healthy body that weighs the right amount and can feel good every day? Why have we been so tremendously misled as a society? And I have adopted it, and it accepted it as my mission in life to solve that problem to the extent that I can. And I was just talking to my sister Cheryl, who I know is on here listening to me, but I was talking to her just 10, 15 minutes ago and said, you know, how do I do a better job of getting this message out there? How do I do a better job of sharing this? Because I've had some success, and I've had some people really benefit a lot from working with me on this and changing their lives in positive ways, but it's been limited. And I just feel like I need to increase my reach, I need to increase you know, the power of my message and get it out there better, because people's lives can be blessed so much by this. People's lives can be literally saved and transformed and changed, and people can add years and even decades to their lives by grasping this crucial health information that's available now. And but not only can people's be adding years to their life, but they can be adding so much life to the years, and how much healthier and happier you can feel each day, and how much more you can enjoy life if you're gut healthy. If you're gut healthy and you can weigh an appropriate and a reasonable amount, and we don't have to become Olympic athletes. We don't have to become, you know, crazy diet all the time. We don't have to have some excessive exercise regimen. We just need to understand how our hormones affect our eating and what we can do to control those hormones appropriately. So kind of a lot there. Um, I just got up from a 4-hour nap here about, well, I guess it was about 2 hours ago now. but I am still recovering from this tremendous jet lag that I'm feeling from being in Thailand. And it's kind of amazed me when I got over there. So Thailand is about 13 hours difference from me here in the mountain time zone. And when I got over there, the transition to that new time zone was noticeable, but it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, I was able to work through it within of a couple days, and within 3 or 4 days, everything pretty much felt normal and everything was fine. But now that I've got back home, trying to make this transition back to my original time zone, this has just been a monster. Like, I have really, really felt this. And I am now, today is Tuesday, so I've been home for 3.5 days here, and I am still struggling with making this transition back to a normal time zone. So this has really hit me hard. Um, when we go to Tahiti, that difference is only like 3 or 4 hours. So it's so the even though it's kind of on the other side of the earth, it's not that much of a difference from a time zone perspective. So it's really not some huge deal to deal with 3 or 4 hours. But when you're flipping to the opposite side of the day, that hits you really hard, and especially when you try to make that transition back. It kind of reminded me. So I had this experience back in 2007, which it's amazing to consider that that is now almost 20 years ago. But I got sent to China and Korea for 2 weeks to go over there and do some training. I had accepted a job as that included some global responsibility, and there was this need to go over to China and Korea to do some training for 2 weeks. And it was decided to just combine these trips, obviously for the travel aspect, and which was fine. It made complete sense. And I want to say I think this was early September of 2007 that I left on a Saturday. I think I left on a Saturday evening and flew to Shanghai. There was probably a stop in there somewhere. And I got to Shanghai around 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. Some Chinese person, some Chinese guy was standing at the airport with a sign that had my name on it. So he picked me up and took me back to what was a Ramada Inn somewhere there in Shanghai. It was amazing to see the city of Shanghai, and a city of what I think is 25 million people. Um, so I rolled in there to the Ramada Inn, and I hadn't slept a whole lot on the plane, maybe a little bit, but I was already a full day into this experience. I get to the Ramada Inn, and I just can't sleep that night. I'm just not sleeping because of the time change. And I think finally around 4 a.m., I finally started to get a little bit of sleep, but then I had to get back up at 6 a.m. Because I was going to be getting picked up at 7:30 or whatever. So I got back up at 6, went down and got myself some breakfast. That was back in the days when I ate food whenever food was in front of me or whenever food was available. So food was available, so I went down and ate breakfast. And this first morning was the morning I was going to be doing my most significant training. So there were like 25 Chinese people in this room who knew some broken English, and I would be standing up in the front of this room for the entire morning doing training on hydraulic fan drives. And now I have a 2-year degree in hydraulics in fluid power technology, and then additionally I completed my bachelor's degree in a business leadership type program through Judson University in Illinois. My 2-year degree is from Ohio State. So I am a graduate of the Ohio State University, which I'm very proud of. So that's my educational background. But I'm standing up here in front of this group of Chinese engineers. Everybody in the room has at least a master's degree. They all have a master's degree in engineering, and there was a half a dozen of these people in there that had PhDs. So here's little Steve Hansen up there training this group of highly educated engineers on hydraulic fan drives. But they all absorbed the information and acted like I was a rock star. And I did throw up a picture of my wife and what was 9 children at the time, and they were just all stunned with that. Like they couldn't even believe that somebody could get married and have 9 children. Because in China, of course, if you have 2 children, you have a large family. So that was pretty amazing to them all. But I'm standing up there in front of this group of people, and I got through my training. And of course, even though I had hardly slept for the last 48 hours, I mean, I was like working on 4 hours of sleep going into 48 hours. So I'm standing up there in front of this room, but there's enough energy and enthusiasm and excitement within myself because I'm doing training in China that I was able to work through that morning, fairly well. So that afternoon, they gave me a tour of the building. They kind of, set me aside in an office and let me catch up on some email or whatever. uh, I'm feeling pretty tired, but and I kind of do a little bit of snoozing that afternoon maybe, but not any real sleep by any means. That evening, this group of Chinese, they decided that they were going to take me out to dinner at some restaurant, and but it was only the guys that came, and in that room there had been at least three or four, maybe even a half a dozen of the people in that room were women, were young women. None of them came along. This was just a guys' night out. We went out to some restaurant, and it just turned out to be a big drinking fest. I mean, obviously dinner was involved, but they mainly used it as an opportunity to just get all boozed up. And of course that wasn't my game. Fortunately, there was one guy there with me, one of the Chinese guys who didn't drink also, and he ended up sitting beside me. Maybe that was on purpose. I don't know. But so they're in there drinking away and taking advantage of the company's expense report, because you got the guy in from the US. So they used that as an reason to go out and get drunk. And so I'm sitting there with this one guy who's not drinking. I it had been made very clear to me not to drink the water, not to drink the tap water. And so I'm sitting there, and they didn't seem to have any kind of bottled water available. So so the only thing that, I mean, they thought they were going to be serving alcohol to everybody, so that was kind of what they had, on the menu. But the only thing they had available that I could reasonably drink was Coke. And that was a time when I really didn't drink caffeinated drinks very often at all, and I was pretty sensitive to caffeine. But I was also very thirsty, and so I drank a Coke with dinner, and I think I was thirsty enough. Well, I know I had 2 Cokes that night. I had 2 12-ounce cans of Coke. So that's a lot of Coke for me. That's a lot of caffeine back in the day, back nearly 20 years ago. So we get done with dinner. Most of these guys are now, half drunk, but the one guy who's not drunk, they get me back to the Ramada Inn again. The next day, I was going to be getting on a plane and traveling to some other city and doing some more training and making some sales calls with a different group of Chinese people. And I think that was we were going to Xiamen, Xiamen. I think that's where we were going next. But that night, so I get back to the hotel, I've now had all this caffeine. I am just wired. I am wired. I'm going into my third night. I've had like 4 hours of sleep, and I cannot sleep again. I was up nearly that entire night. Again, maybe around 4 a.m. I finally got some sleep for a couple hours, and then I'm back out of bed, get myself pulled together and off to the airport so we can grab a plane and head to this next session. And so in that next city we did some additional training, and I think it was that afternoon that we went to this company, King Long, and I think I'm saying that right. Um, so hydraulic fan drives are often used on buses, and there are a number of bus manufacturers here in North America. One would be Gillig out here near San Francisco. I've called on Gillig before. There's also Freightliner down in South Carolina. I think that's where they're at. And then there's another one in Michigan, and there's one up in Canada. I guess I don't remember all the names of these guys, but I was very familiar with all these bus manufacturers because I called on them, and we discussed hydraulic fan drives, and some of them purchased our products as a part of their buses. And what was interesting is here in North America, these bus manufacturers would usually make between 1,500 and 2,000 buses a year, which that's like with 200 working days, that's like 10 buses a day. And that's like pretty good flow when you're making a bus to get 10 buses out the door every day. That's pretty good. Like you're working pretty hard to get that done. Over here at this King Long company there in China, and again, I don't remember exactly what city this is, although I could probably look up King Long and figure this out. Um, Over there at King Long, they were doing 20,000 buses a day, a magnitude of 10. They were pushing 200 buses out, essentially. I'm sorry, I said 20,000 a year, essentially 200 buses a day, which that's amazing. That's just a phenomenal number of buses. And one of the things I noticed in this factory was, whereas back here in North America, you would see, you would typically see maybe two or three employees working at a station as the bus moved through its different stations. You would see maybe two or three employees working at a station. There in China, there was like 25 people working at each station. So it was just like, a bunch of bumblebees or honeybees running around, working on these buses. It was pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing to see. The other thing I noticed there at King Long was up on the wall over top of the lunchroom area or whatever was a number of placards, and there were all these pictures of the young people who were part of the Communist Party. And these, as employees working at this King Long company, these were the people that you were supposed to look up to and obey. And I don't want to use the word worship, but that was kind of what was going on. Like, these are your leaders, and it's not negotiable. It's not like you get to vote for these people. These are your people. And so that was a little bit interesting too. And this is not a Donald Trump, Joe Biden situation where you get to laugh and make fun of these people. This is like, you look up to these people and obey, or life is just not going to be good for you. So that's kind of what that was all about. It was pretty interesting. So I somehow managed to make it through that day, even though I am now in my fourth day, and I've had about 6 hours of total sleep over about 4 days. Well, that night, did we travel on another plane that night and fly to another city, or did that happen the next morning? I'm not sure. I think maybe we flew out that night to another city. We got in late, maybe went out and had a late dinner or whatever. Again, a late night, got to the hotel late, hardly slept again because my body still couldn't figure out what to do with this time change. So I guess the message that I was trying to share was, when I went over to China nearly 20 years ago, I was 5 days into that experience before I finally got a night's sleep. It was the most insane thing that I had ever experienced as far as time change. And, but I finally got used to it. And then that next week, I think it was that Friday night, I flew to Seoul, Korea, and I got to spend the weekend in Seoul there in South Korea. And that was, oh, I guess I don't remember what hotel that was, but that was some hotel right downtown. I was kind of by myself for the weekend. I don't think I had anybody like chaperoning me around or anything. There was this really neat museum nearby the hotel there, outdoor kind of exhibit thing, that I went over and visited on a Sunday, and it was really just fascinating. That whole exhibit and that whole experience there in Seoul, Korea. What was But that weekend I slept so much. I slept so much that weekend, and I think I pretty much slept the entire Saturday, and then I got up on Sunday after having slept in, and I went to that museum and spent the afternoon there, and then came back and slept some more. So I did finally catch up on my sleep. The next week in Korea, I was used to the time change. Everything was fine. The thing I remember about Korea is, again, I was with a different group every day. I was traveling around some, not anywhere as much as I had in China, but I was with a different group of people every day and going out to dinner with a different group of people every night. And so the first night, the guys were like, hey, new guy from United States, let's take him out and have him experience Korean barbecue. And am I saying that right? Yeah. And that's where you take the food and you dip it in the boiling water, and you can cook your vegetables and whatever, and lots of different taste, and there was mint and different spices that were a part of this. Really neat experience. Everything tasted really good. Really liked the whole Korean barbecue experience. And so the second night, I'm with a different group of people, and they're like, hey, new guy, let's take him out for Korean barbecue. So again, it's like, okay, this is fun. Like, I like this food is good. Let's go do this again. No problem. Third day, different group of people. Oh, new guy. Well, let's take him out for Korean barbecue. Now, by the third day, it's like, okay, I've kind of gotten used to what this tastes like. It is kind of cool, but um, I guess I can do this again for a third night. Getting a little worn out with it. Maybe some Italian, or maybe some Mexican, or or maybe just a cheeseburger would be great, but okay, let's go do Korean barbecue again. So I got to do that a third night in a row. And then wouldn't you know it, the fourth night, the guys are like, hey, new guy, let's go out for a Korean barbecue. So I didn't speak up or anything. I'm just like, whatever. Okay, let's go do the Korean barbecue for the fourth night in a row. At this point, I wasn't really liking it anymore. I really had no interest in eating the same thing again. I'd gotten used to how everything tastes. Wasn't really interested in eating Korean barbecue that fourth night in a row. But I powered my way through it. The fifth night, I was in Seoul by myself, and nobody was taking me out for dinner that night. There was an Outback Steakhouse that was just a couple blocks away, and so I walked down to the Outback Steakhouse and had myself a nice steak and potato and the chocolate thunder from down under for dessert. Same kind of meal I would get back here in good old North America. It didn't taste exactly the same, but it was close enough, and it wasn't Korean barbecue. And how grateful I was for that. So, but then I made it back home from China, and uh, and then it literally took me another week once I got back home to figure out how to make that time change again. That and it was worse once I got home trying to figure out how to get back to normal than it was. Well, I don't know. That was pretty bad those first 5 days there in China. But I have never been so sleep deprived as I did when I got to China there that first time. That was so insane, just going through that, and then trying to get out and do training and make sales calls every day when you're feeling so sleep deprived. So I wanted to spend about 5 minutes sharing that whole story that I just spent 25 minutes sharing. So I kind of wiped out the time that I wanted to spend talking about some other things. But we are a good 26, almost 27 minutes into this now. So I think I'm gonna leave that with my story for tonight. I guess my story for tonight is about time change and how challenging that can be when you end up on the other side of the world. But what a neat experience it was to go to Thailand. What a neat experience it was to go to China and to South Korea there many years ago. As I continue to develop my ability to share this amazing health protocol and this health message and this message of physical transformation, uh, it is my hope, it's my anticipation that I will be able to do more of this in Asia. That's something that we definitely want to do. It was always a bit of a dream and objective of mine to be able to do business and have activity in Asia and specifically China. In fact, I started taking Chinese 30 years ago, and I am not in any way proficient with Chinese, but I know a certain amount of it, and I know a certain number of characters, and I have a certain background in it. Weak as it is, it has been something I've been working on for a long time. So it is one of my objectives to spend um, more of my future in Asia. And so we'll take that one step at a time and see how that works out. But that whole time change thing, when you flip the script, when you flip the schedule like that, just a warning for anybody who heads in that direction, that will hit you. That will hit you really hard, and especially on the back end. So that's my message for tonight. Thank you for anybody who was brave enough to tune in and listen to all this. I love to hear anybody's stories or comments. If you have experience with this and want to throw a comment out there, certainly please do. I'd be glad to hear your experience. If anybody has any experiences that they want to come on this amazing show and share, we always love to have guests. So certainly just let me know. Tomorrow night will be Wednesday, and so we'll have some amazing topics to talk about tomorrow.